Hey, what you got there? Oh, hey, what's up? Well, just got some Christmas money from Grandma and yeah, a bonus check from work. Nice, huh? Oh, nice. What are you gonna do with it? Well, I was thinking maybe, putting some of that down on my credit card debt and maybe make some of those year-end 401k contributions. It's very wise of you. You should definitely do that. Or we all love Eurorack modules, and I think it's not an exaggeration when I say that it's one of the most inspiring trends in music technology today. But if you have yet to get into Eurorack modules, you're in luck because I'm here to actually talk you out of getting into it. So, modules at first glance don't seem all that expensive. Individual modules range anywhere from $150 US and up, and it's modular, so the upfront cost is low, relatively speaking, and you add them as you go, right? So here's one of my early compact starter modular rigs, just 62 HP wide. I innocently spent a few $100s to get started. Then, without too much thought, I added a few more modules here, then a few modules there, and later only did I realize that this thing was adding up to some serious money. Niche products tend to be pricey, and Eurorack modules are about as niche as they get. Most are made by small companies, some are even just one or two people in very limited quantities. So naturally, these things are not optimized for cost. This is probably why the Eurorack module scene is so diverse and exciting, because the love and the passion that exudes from some of these products. But you do literally pay a price for that. You hear a lot about flexibility and the ability to design your own dream synth, but trust me, your credit card bill will give you nightmares. Furthermore, in my experience, you have to reach this critical mass of number of modules you own before it starts to really become worth the price you pay for this modularity. When you're starting out with just a few modules, while you can still be very imaginative, it's nothing like when you start to own dozens, 50, or even hundreds of modules. It's because modules have this force multiplier effect, so the value per module increases exponentially as you own more of them because of the way they interact with each other in such powerful ways. So the temptation is always there to get more modules. Then again, there are worse ways to spend money, and if you have disposable income and this is your passion or your hobby, or you're a working pro, then sure. And the used market and the way they hold value isn't all that bad. Now, the DIY community has existed for a long time, and I'm sure it'll continue to thrive. There are definitely ways to save costs if you're handy with a soldering iron and if you have the time to put into it. But time is also a valuable resource, so more on that in just a bit. There are plenty of clever ways to remain DAW-less with hybrid solutions, such as adding a looper or just a straight up Akai MPC or something similar. But these have their own set of downsides too. I mentioned earlier that time is a resource like any other resource, perhaps the most precious resource of them all. And at the end of the day, you want to spend your time at least, if not more, as wisely as you spend your money. And I have to say, Eurorack modules can be a huge time sink. Now, don't get me wrong, again, there are worse ways to spend time than twisting knobs and making cool sounds. I mean, we know we all love it. But in my time with Eurorack modules, the learning curve per module has been pretty steep. Most modules are still pretty difficult to decipher, especially for newcomers. Even with the best YouTube review channels, I end up asking more questions than getting answers. There are just so many modules, it's pretty hard to cover them all in depth. Especially what I find lacking is the interactions. So much of the power of these modules is locked up in how they interact with other modules. How could you possibly review all of these permutations of modules interacting with all these other modules? The reality is you need loads of time. Eurorack modules demand attention and time to soak and simmer. It's not free, it costs time. I first got into Eurorack modules because I love the GR1 so much. Yeah, I know you love the GR1. The GR1 is a standalone granular synthesizer, and so it was a way to make music and sound design away from the computer, this so-called DAW-less production. I discovered soon that there are many granular synthesizer modules in the Eurorack format, so that was my gateway into the world of Eurorack. But the takeaway though here is that I was looking for a workflow that got me away from the computer, but it didn't have to be a Eurorack format at all. Also in hindsight, the Akai MPC could have easily been another viable path for me, and of course much cheaper too, with end-to-end standalone production possibilities away from the computer again, and just to simply spice up a different look for my creative workflow. So if you happen to be on the fence about Eurorack modules, maybe you can ask yourself this: what are you trying to accomplish? Like, does it have to be in a Eurorack format, or is there just a box that can do similar things? Okay, so you're still watching and you're not deterred and you want to give this a go. Well, here are a few things that you should consider. So I'm telling you that there is a certain amount of money that you're going to have to spend in order for you to reach this critical mass sweet spot, and I think it hovers around a few $1,000s. So on one end, that's a lot of money to spend, but comparatively, think of it as purchasing a high-end laptop with a much better resale value. One of the early regrets I have is spending my budget too quickly. I sort of spent it all on one go and it was overwhelming. Instead, I think it's best if you had the budget set aside, but go slow and spend it over a certain amount of time, maybe 5-6 months or longer. I would start with an oscillator, a modulator, and a utility with a case that you can grow into, and then fill in the gaps as you go. Now, I am planning to post a follow-up video on exactly what this starter kit could look like, so if you're interested, please don't forget to subscribe. There are many advantages to spreading your spending over a period of time. They could be sales, a used one that pops up, or a new version that gets released. There will always be new versions and sales, so you have to commit at some point, but I think this method still helps. I certainly underestimated the amount of time learning Eurorack modules would take. At first, it was frustrating and anything but creative for that reason. I just didn't budget my time accordingly. But once I got realistic and developed a habit, just a routine of uninterrupted time for 30 minutes, hour each week to goof around and to experiment with no pressure other than to just discover, I found that the learning process itself became that much more joyful and rewarding. So hopefully this was helpful to you guys. Certainly this is just my opinion and my experience. And so I would love to hear from you guys. If you are an experienced vet, maybe you have some awesome tips and insights that you can share about your best practices. Or if you're a newcomer, feel free to let me know what you think and what your thoughts are, and I'd be more than happy to answer them.